Hey y'all, welcome back to the archives. Today will be a little different. We all know what Charles Manson did, so I'm covering this story a little different. The story of Charles Manson and his so-called family begins long before the infamous murders. It starts with a man who had a twisted vision of a racially motivated apocalypse and a desire for power and control. Manson, a small-time criminal and aspiring musician, used his charisma to attract a group of vulnerable followers in the late 1960s. Most of Manson's followers were young women, disillusioned by society and seeking a sense of belonging. Manson offered them a place in his family, promising love, freedom, and a utopian future. But behind the facade of peace and love was a dark and manipulative leader who preached about Helter Skelter, a term he borrowed from a Beatles song, which he twisted into a prophecy of an impending race war. Manson's control over his followers was absolute. Through a combination of psychological manipulation, hallucinogenic drugs, and promises of salvation, he convinced them to commit heinous acts in his name. The family lived communally, often moving between various locations until they settled at the Spahn Ranch, where Manson's influence over them grew stronger. Understanding the origins and dynamics of Manson's control is crucial to comprehending the horrific events that would soon unfold. The stage was set, and the players were in place for one of the most shocking and brutal crime sprees in American history. If you're captivated by the dark corners of history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. Charles Manson, a man whose name has become synonymous with evil. But how did his crimes shape American culture? And why are we still so fascinated by him? Manson's name has become a cultural touchstone, synonymous with chaos and the dark side of the 1960s. His story has inspired countless books, movies, and documentaries. Some seek to understand the man behind the madness, while others exploit the shock value for entertainment. One of the earliest books, Helter Skelter, written by prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi, became an instant bestseller. It detailed the gruesome murders and the bizarre courtroom antics, giving the public a deeper look into the twisted mind of Manson. The book was later adapted into a TV movie, further cementing Manson's place in popular culture. Hollywood couldn't resist the allure of Manson's story. Films like The Manson Family and Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood have drawn from the horrific events to create compelling, albeit controversial narratives. These movies often spark debate about the ethics of sensationalizing such real-life horrors. Documentaries, too, have kept Manson's story alive. The latest Netflix documentary, Chaos: The Manson Murders, suggests that Manson might have been more than just a criminal. Could he have been a pawn in a larger game, a product of government mind control experiments? The documentary has reignited interest and speculation, keeping Manson in the public eye. But why does Manson continue to fascinate us? Perhaps it's the sheer audacity of his crimes, the way he manipulated his followers, or the lingering questions about his true nature. Was he a mastermind, a madman, or something else entirely? Manson's influence extends beyond media. His image and ideology have permeated music, fashion, and even internet culture. Bands like Guns N' Roses and Marilyn Manson have drawn inspiration from his infamy, while his face has become a symbol of rebellion and anarchy in fringe communities. Yet, this fascination comes with a cost. It's easy to forget the real victims: Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, Stephen Parent, and the LaBiancas. Their lives were brutally cut short, and their families continue to bear the scars. So, as we continue to explore Manson's infamy, let's not lose sight of the human tragedy at its core. The fascination with Manson reflects our own society's struggle to understand the depths of human evil and the fragility of the human mind. What do you think? Why does Charles Manson continue to captivate us? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know what you think. Back to the story. Let's dive into the Netflix documentary Chaos: The Manson Murders and its explosive claims about Charles Manson's alleged involvement with the CIA's MKUltra program. The documentary, directed by Tom O'Neill, has sent shockwaves through the true crime community. It suggests that Manson wasn't just a deranged cult leader, but potentially a pawn in a larger, more sinister game. According to the film, Manson might have been part of the CIA's MKUltra program, which aimed to investigate mind control through the use of drugs like LSD. But what evidence does the documentary present? First, it highlights Manson's uncanny ability to manipulate and control his followers, often using LSD, a drug central to MKUltra experiments. The film suggests that Manson's access to large quantities of LSD and his seemingly untouchable status with law enforcement could indicate government protection. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence presented is Manson's repeated brushes with the law that never resulted in significant jail time, despite clear violations of parole. The documentary argues that these instances might indicate that Manson was being shielded by higher powers. Experts interviewed in the documentary have mixed reactions. Some, like former FBI agent Ted Gunderson, find the claims plausible, citing the CIA's documented history of unethical experiments. Others, like criminologist Dr. Joan Barker, dismiss the theory as speculative, arguing that the evidence is circumstantial and lacks concrete proof. The public reaction has been equally divided. Social media is ablaze with debates, with some viewers convinced that the documentary exposes a hidden truth, while others believe it's just another conspiracy theory designed to sensationalize Manson's already infamous story. So what do you think? Is it possible that Charles Manson was more than just a criminal mastermind? Could he have been a product of government mind control experiments? Or is this just another layer of myth added to his dark legacy? Let me know in the comments. I truly value your opinion and want to know. Now, let's shift our focus to the aftermath of the Manson murders and the trial that followed. The trial of Charles Manson and his followers was one of the most sensationalized in American history. The media frenzy surrounding the case was unprecedented, with every detail of the gruesome murders and the bizarre behavior of Manson and his family making headlines. The prosecution painted Manson as a manipulative, charismatic leader who used his followers to carry out his deadly commands. Manson's defense, on the other hand, argued that he was being scapegoated and that the real culprits were his followers who acted on their own accord. The trial captivated the nation, with people divided on whether Manson was a mastermind or merely a convenient villain. Ultimately, Manson and several of his followers were convicted of the murders and sentenced to life in prison. But the questions and controversies surrounding Manson's true role and the extent of his influence continue to this day. The legacy of Charles Manson remains a dark and complex chapter in American history, one that continues to fascinate and horrify in equal measure. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the aftermath and the lasting impact of the Manson murders in the next chapter. Chapter 4: The Hidden Connections. As we continue our exploration, let's delve deeper into the connections that might have played a role in Charles Manson's dark saga. Behind every notorious figure, there often lies a web of hidden influences and connections. In the case of Charles Manson, these connections are as mysterious as they are unsettling. One name that keeps surfacing is that of Dr. Louis Jolyon West, a prominent psychiatrist with ties to the CIA's MKUltra program. Dr. West was known for his work on mind control and had a history of experimenting with LSD on unwitting subjects. What's even more intriguing is West's connection to the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic in San Francisco, a place frequently visited by Manson and his followers. Could it be that Manson's exposure to LSD and his subsequent manipulative prowess were more than just coincidental? Did Dr. West's work indirectly or directly shape the mind of one of America's most infamous cult leaders? Adding another layer to this dark tapestry is the enigmatic figure of Ronald Stark, an alleged CIA operative involved in the global LSD trade. Stark's activities in the 1960s and 70s have been shrouded in secrecy, but some researchers believe he played a crucial role in distributing LSD to influential figures and groups, possibly including Manson. The connections don't end there. There are also whispers about Manson's interactions with key figures in the Hollywood elite, including music producer Terry Melcher and actress Sharon Tate. These relationships, coupled with Manson's failed attempts to break into the music industry, add another dimension to his motivations and actions. As we piece together these fragments of information, a chilling picture begins to emerge. Was Charles Manson merely a puppet in a grander scheme, manipulated by shadowy figures with their own agendas? Or was he a master manipulator who skillfully used these connections to further his own dark ambitions? The truth may never be fully uncovered, but one thing is certain: The story of Charles Manson is far more complex than it appears on the surface. The trial of Charles Manson wasn't just about murder, it was a performance. Manson controlled his followers even from behind bars. They shaved their heads, carved symbols into their skin, and followed his every move. The courtroom became a stage for Manson's twisted theatrics. Manson never physically killed anyone, but it didn't matter. He was sentenced to death. But when California abolished the death penalty, he spent the rest of his life in prison, dying in 2017. His influence, however, lingered on. It was the summer of love, the era of peace, Woodstock, and psychedelic freedom. But beneath the haze of free love and LSD, something far darker was brewing, something that would shock the world. A man no one would have remembered, a failed musician, a con artist, was about to orchestrate one of the most infamous crimes in American history. His name, Charles Manson. This is the story of Charles Manson, a man who didn't just kill, he convinced others to kill for him. But what if everything we've been told about him isn't the full truth? What if there's more to the story? Before he was a cult leader, Charles Manson was just another lost cause, a product of a broken system. Born to a 16-year-old mother, he never knew his father. By the time he was 13, he was already in and out of institutions, surviving on petty crime and manipulation. His early life was a series of unfortunate events. By the time he was an adult, he had spent over half his life in prison. But behind bars, Manson learned something far more powerful than violence. He learned control. He studied psychology, mind games, and most importantly, how to manipulate people. He became adept at reading people's weaknesses and exploiting them. This skill would later become his most dangerous weapon. Welcome to Spawn Ranch, a rundown former movie set in the California desert. This was where Manson turned lost souls into his personal army. The ranch, owned by blind 80-year-old George Spahn, became a haven for Manson and his followers. It was here that Manson's dark plans began to take shape. His followers weren't just fans, they were believers. And like any cult leader, he promised them everything: love, meaning, family. But there was a catch. Their devotion had to be absolute. Manson used a mix of drugs, sex, and psychological manipulation to maintain control over his followers. His influence over them was absolute. Manson wasn't just preaching love and music. He was warning them of an upcoming apocalypse, a race war he called Helter Skelter. And the only way to survive it? Start the war themselves. He convinced his followers that they were the chosen ones to ignite this chaos. His words were their gospel. August 8, 1969. Manson orders his followers to go to 10050 Cielo Drive, home of actress Sharon Tate. Their orders? Do something witchy. The night would end in unimaginable horror. 4 members of the Manson family creep into the house. Sharon Tate, 8 months pregnant, is brutally murdered, along with 4 others, their blood smeared across the walls. The brutality of the crime shocked the nation. One night wasn't enough. The next evening, Manson personally selects another target, Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. They too are slaughtered, their blood used to write messages of terror. The horror continued to spread. Hollywood was in shock. No one felt safe. And when police finally arrested Manson and his family, the world watched in horror as the true madness unfolded. The city of dreams had turned into a nightmare. The trial of Charles Manson wasn't just about murder, it was a performance. Manson controlled his followers even from behind bars. They shaved their heads, carved symbols into their skin, and followed his every move. The courtroom became a stage for Manson's twisted theatrics. Manson never physically killed anyone, but it didn't matter. He was sentenced to death. But when California abolished the death penalty, he spent the rest of his life in prison, dying in 2017. His influence, however, lingered on. Thank you guys for watching. What do you think of Charles Manson? Was he a genius mastermind, a CIA plant, or just a stone-cold stupid killer? I know which one I'm leaning toward. Leave a comment and let me know. Make sure and like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell